The United States made good on its promise to carry out a freedom of navigation exercise in the South China Sea, challenging Beijing's sovereignty over newly created islands. This comes as Taiwan says China may have the resources capable of invading its soil. Plus, Tokyo says it hasn't accepted an invitation to meet with President Park Geun-hye in Seoul just yet. These stories are coming up next. This is the Asia Brief. Greetings and salutations, my excellent friend. Steve Miller here on this beautiful Wednesday, the 28th of October, 2015. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to begin with news of the USS Lassen, sailing into what China says are its territorial waters. The United States made good on its promise to challenge Beijing's sovereignty claims in the South China Sea by sailing the USS Lassen, one of its destroyers, inside the 12 nautical mile bubble surrounding newly constructed islands. The Lassen sailed close to the Subi and Mischief reefs in the hotly contested Spratly Island group, and it was immediately challenged by Chinese vessels who shadowed the American ship, informing it had illegally entered its territorial waters. What's unclear from the reports is how far the USS Lassen went past the 12 nautical mile barrier, but as we learned from Mark Cozad, Senior Defense Policy Analyst at the Rand Corporation in a recent Asia Now podcast, it isn't so much how deep the vessel penetrates, but rather the overall statement made.
I think as a general principle, if the movement through China's claimed 12 nautical mile zone is one that's shallow and very quick, that probably will send a very bad signal to others in the region and may give China some way of using that situation to show that they have the upper hand. I think it has to be something that is a very clear statement about U.S. views of freedom of navigation within that 12 nautical miles. And it has to be very clear and not on the outside of whatever that 12 nautical mile zone may be, and not for a short period of time, but something that is a very clear statement that the U.S. is asserting its right to navigate freely in those waters.
Philippine President Benigno Aquino said he welcomed the U.S. patrol, calling it a balance of power. Freedom of navigation has been expounded and propounded by all parties to the issue of the South China Sea, West Philippine Sea, he said, before adding, quote, "Everybody seems to be guaranteeing freedom of navigation, so I see no issue as to this U.S. naval ship traversing under international law in waters that should be free to be traveled upon by any non-belligerent country," end quote. Beijing, well, didn't quite see it that way and summoned the U.S. ambassador over the incident. China's foreign ministry said, quote, "China will resolutely respond to any country's deliberate provocations. We will continue to closely monitor the relevant sea and airspace and take all necessary steps in accordance with the need." China strongly urges the U.S. side to conscientiously handle China's serious representations, immediately correct its mistake, and not take any dangerous or provocative acts that threatens China's sovereignty and security interests, end quote. China claimed the U.S. patrol was a coercive action that seeks to militarize the South China Sea region and was an abuse of freedom of navigation under international law. The United States said in its briefing that this wasn't a one-off incident and that more patrols in the region would follow in the next few weeks around island features Vietnam and the Philippines have constructed in the Spratlys as well. As Cozad said in that Asia Now interview, he doesn't expect China to respond irrationally or for the incident to get out of hand between Washington and Beijing. But should a third party into the mix, then, well, that could change the situation rapidly. Expect tension and rhetoric in the region to rise as this game of chess between the two superpowers gets underway. The 2015 National Defense Report in Taiwan said China is continuing to accumulate large-scale war capabilities with the threat of a cross-strait military conflict continuing to exist, noting that Beijing's spending on its military has grown at double-digit rates over the past 10 years. The defense paper claimed that China was bolstering its forces in an effort to deter foreign forces from intervening should there be an invasion, which according to the report was Beijing's greatest concern. Furthermore, it said China's armed forces would be strong enough by 2020 to launch an effort to retake the island, which broke away from the mainland following a 1949 civil war. Taiwan fears that should a pro-independence president be elected in the upcoming election, doubts could emerge if cross-strait peace could be maintained. While China has been more transparent with its military spending, and that spending is on par with what you would expect to see of a nation that size, the fact that Beijing hasn't ruled out retaking Taiwan by force should it formally declare independence is what has Taipei worried. In addition, since the United States is Taiwan's chief ally and provides arms to the island, there is a risk that Washington could be drawn into the mix as well. Some feel that due to warmer economic ties with the mainland, it might create a situation of decreased vigilance and allow China to assert control. The big buzz in Asia has been the forthcoming East Asia Trilateral Summit that looks to be taking place in Seoul, South Korea this weekend. That, in and of itself, is a huge deal, as it would mark the first time in years that the three nations will have met. It would also be the very first formal sit-down between Pak, Xi, and Abe. Then news surfaced that it appeared there would be a pair of bilateral meetings on November 2nd, with Abe meeting Xi and Pak independently. However, that may not be the case. Tokyo reports that Abe hasn't accepted Pak's offer for a bilateral summit, with some suggesting that the comfort women issue is the main sticking point. Pak in the past has said she would be unwilling to meet with Abe unless he apologizes for Japan's past wrongdoing, and it's unclear if that's the condition that's holding up the meeting. Pak has been softening her stance on Abe in recent months, which is why we're seeing the trilateral meeting now. However, agreeing to meet with Abe in Seoul without a new apology might be too big of a political price to pay, given the furor over the perceived lack of contrition Abe gave in August. Well, my friends, those are today's stories. Please, if you have a moment, please. Well, my friends, those are today's stories. Please take a moment and let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. The Asia Brief is a special feature of the Asia News Weekly podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with your friends, and if you haven't, subscribe. Subscribing is free, and when you do, the next episode is delivered automatically to you. You can subscribe on our website, asianewsweekly.net, or in your favorite podcast application. You can also keep up with more news from the region by following Asia News Weekly on Facebook or Twitter. And if you have any comments, questions, or feedback, be sure to drop us a line. That email address is podcast@asianewsweekly.net. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, remember to be true to yourself and to always be awesome.